What's going on, guys? It's your boy Scrub here, back again with another video. Hope you guys are having a great day. I know I am, and today we're going to be doing more spooky stories, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. When I was 15, I traveled to Europe with my family, and we stayed in Thal, Germany in a small inn for a few nights. My parents had doubles on the second floor, and my sister had double bedrooms next to theirs, and I was lucky enough to have a single room all to myself at the far end of the hall. We went to check into our rooms, and as soon as I entered the hallway of the rooms, I remember feeling as though I walked into a wall of bad energy. I was so unnerved and uneasy in that hallway, but I ended up passing it off as overactive imagination. I slept the first night without any issue other than waking up a few times, and the next morning at breakfast, one of my sisters mentioned feeling really uncomfortable in the hallway, almost as if the air was crushing. It unnerved me even more that I wasn't the only one who felt weirded out, and she was an adult at the time, so it further cemented in my head that our wing of the hotel was just odd. Later that night, I'm sleeping peacefully when at about 2 a.m. I was woken up by something ripping the covers off me and being jerked about 2 feet towards the end of the bed by my ankle. At first, I thought someone had broken into the room because when I turned towards what grabbed me, a huge looming black shape was visible in the darkness, like it was a man there. I frantically flipped the light on only for there to be nothing there. The window was locked from the inside, there was no one in the closet or the bathroom, and my room was still locked too. I stayed up the rest of the night scared, playing Cooking Mama on the DS, and the next morning we're at breakfast and my sister mentioned she was up half the night because she thought she saw a person silhouetted in the wall of her room, but when she turned on the light there was no one there. It was overall just a bizarre, creepy experience, and we checked out that day, so I didn't get to experience anything after that. But it still freaks me out. There have been several experiences in my family that I have personally seen some kind of blue translucent figure in my room when I was younger, and my mom claims to have seen a young girl in her room at night once. The biggest experience though, the one that really converted me, involved my youngest brother. My brother is 13 years younger than me, and growing up he'd often play in his room. Me and my mom would hear him talking to somebody sometimes as if he was playing with them. Things like peekaboo, playing with his toys, and we thought nothing of it and that it was just like an imaginary friend or something. This went on for years. When he was around 5 years old, he got a PlayStation and started playing video games more, as well as spending more time with friends he met in school. One night, while he's playing games, my mom and I hear him screaming from his bedroom and we run up there. My brother has dropped the controller with his game unpaused and he's on the bed he had been sitting on, and it was basically looking like someone was trying to drag him away from the bottom of the bed. He kept screaming, get off me, I don't want to play with you anymore," while frantically trying to scramble away from something. But the creepiness didn't end there because those legs were in the air awkwardly, as if something had him and was dragging him back down. My mom ran over and grabbed him and carried him downstairs, and we called my granddad over to reassure us. There hasn't been any experiences like that since. I said he's 12 now, and that happened 7 years ago. He remembers it happening but refuses to talk about it, and if it's mentioned, he gets very scared and has nightmares that night. It doesn't really matter what else my mom and I have seen, nothing comes close to that experience. My family spent 10 years living in an old farmhouse that was over 200 years old and used in the Underground Railroad. There were a lot of weird things that happened in that house, but never happened in any of the houses I lived in before or after. I've never been a big believer in the paranormal, and I think most things can be explained rationally, but there are a few things that happened there that I still think about a lot. Things that went missing all the time, only to show up somewhere else in the house. Typically the basement, where we definitely would not have left them. Things would show up. And I mean, like, I would put something in my room on the second floor and find it in the basement. For the longest time I wrote it off as being forgetful, but it never happened that often again after we moved. No one ever wanted to be alone in the house, like ever, and I'm an introvert who loves being alone, but I would find excuses to not be there if no one else was home. There were a lot of creaky noises, thumps, bumps, and just weird noises too. I've lived in old houses after this one and they haven't made the same level of noises that this one did. It could just be the age of the house though, who knows. The basement in general was scary because it was old and dark and there were a lot of hidden rooms in it. There was a big covered pit in one of the hidden rooms where they would hide runaway slaves that was really interesting. But there was also a general vibe down there that terrified everyone. We went down there to do the laundry and that was it. Nobody liked to spend a lot of time down there if they could help it. I had panic attacks every time I went down there and wouldn't go there, even if I was the only one home alone. Even dogs refused to go down there. I've never had issues with basements before or after that one either. The biggest thing, though, was that I used to see what I can only describe as shapes of people at night. I woke up a lot in the middle of the night and I'd see figures in my room and in the hallway on the second floor. They were kind of like shadowy figures in the dark, but it was always the same. A woman, child, and big figure that looked like a man. I had a very active imagination, so I always just thought I was scaring myself. I'd never been afraid of the dark before we moved there, and I never saw them again when we moved away. I never mentioned it to my family because I just assumed I was scaring myself, but I recently told my sister, and she said that she hated sleeping upstairs because she woke up a lot, and she would always see weird shapes in the dark. A woman, a child, and a big man. Maybe it was ghosts after all, or maybe those are just the typical things a kid would come up with on their own. I'm still not sure. I grew up in a small Kansas town and lived about 8 miles away from an abandoned clinic from the late 1800s and early 1900s. The town it's in, and still stands to this day, has about 400 residents. They all steer clear of the entire block the clinic was on. The closest buildings is about a quarter-mile away because of the sounds that come from the building at night. My junior year of high school, me and my girlfriend at the time got out her Ouija board and were messing around at our house, drinking a little. A few friends came over and one of the guys started telling stories about the clinic. He lived a few blocks away and had grown up listening to the stories. Babies crying through the night, doctors and nurses seen standing in the shadows. He even said that a little girl, 4 or 5 years old, was rumored to have gone to the clinic by accident in the 80s and hasn't seen or said a word to anyone since. We were all creeped out by the story, but I was a daredevil in high school, so I got everyone into vehicles and we started the 8-mile trek there. It was near midnight and we said we were only going to drive by and see what the place was about. We pulled into town and my friend gave me directions to the street it was on. We turned the last corner and the air literally felt denser and colder. You could tell it was a special, quote-unquote, place. The trees surrounding the building were so overgrown you could barely see it anymore. The only thing we could really see was a glint of broken glass in the windows. I wasn't having that. I pulled down the road, parallel with the building, and put my car in park. My girlfriend immediately started freaking out. She knew I wanted to get closer and I was determined. I popped my trunk, grabbed a flashlight and a handgun and headed down a path that looked like it hadn't been walked in a decade. The closer I got, the colder it got. Even though night started out warm, I could see my breath getting thicker as I neared the clinic. I didn't hear any screaming babies or see anything in the windows. I knew he was lying, but I wanted to get closer. Walking around the perimeter, I saw 3 doors. The front door, the side door, and what appeared to be a storm shelter. I tried the front door first, but it was locked and jammed and wouldn't open. The side door opened about a foot before it hit something on the other side, and I didn't really want to go down the cellar. So I did another perimeter check and found a window basically busted out. I used a thicker branch and found on the ground to clear the remaining broken glass and began climbing to the window. Hey! I almost fell onto my face. I jumped through the window so fast. One of the other guys came to see what I was doing and he rushed at me when he saw me climbing through the window. What do you think you're doing? I just want to see what it's like inside. I'll be fine. You can stand out here with the pistol and keep an eye on the window so no one tries to follow me. It took like 3 minutes to actually convince him, but he finally agreed in the end. I turned back around and got back to climbing through the window. I had one foot on the ground and was bringing my other through when I heard footsteps in the basement, or at least creaking. I told myself it was just an old building, but I was sure I heard some footsteps. I shined the flashlight around and saw gurneys with straps for arms and legs, like you would see in any old-school mental asylums, and wooden stools. There were shelves lined with empty jars and tools and clamps. Walking towards the back of the building, I saw a few stations. For such a small town, it seemed excessive to me. Continuing along the wall, I noticed another 3/4 of the way down the wall, another door. I walked over and began to open it, and immediately I was overwhelmed with what seemed to be thousands of screaming babies, like newborns, but you could hear pain in their shrill screeches. It lasted about 10 seconds, but it was gone after. Maybe I imagined it. I opened the door the rest of the way and saw stairs leading to the cellar. More gurneys, more stools, and more stations. I walked down the stairs, creeping slowly just in case they were rotted and decided to fall through. I stopped halfway down, crouched a little, and shined the light around. There was a very big difference upstairs and downstairs. The jars along the wall all the way around the building were filled with fluids and fetuses and varying sizes. It appeared this is what actually happened here. It reeked like 100-year-old death, and I started going back upstairs and heard a crash below me. I looked around and saw one of the stools had been knocked over, and as I looked, the next one closer to me flew away. A few seconds later, the next. That was enough for me. I don't remember running upstairs or climbing out the window or running through the woods. The next thing I remember was being in the driver's seat of my car with my friend shaking my shoulders. Once I calmed down, I moved and let a friend drive home. Apparently, I came out the window, screaming my head off, and sprinted to the car. My girlfriend said they could hear me the entire time I was screaming so loud. The guy out the window said he heard baby screams and took off and was halfway back to town by the time we got a hold with him. I never went back or asked any more questions after that. I was a complete skeptic before this incident. My wife and I rented a secluded small 2-bedroom cabin in the Mount Rainier, Washington area for a hiking adventure. Upon arriving, my wife walked into the house and said there was no way she was sleeping here because there was too much bad energy in one room. To her defense, it was creepy. There was weird doll dresses on the walls as decorations, a rickety rocking chair in the corner, and an oddly placed door that was locked but presumably led to the attic. Once we settled, we discovered a cabin journal with entries from past guests. There were multiple terrifying entries. My husband woke to the smell of bacon and eggs, but there was no one awake. The doll dress in the bedroom is a gateway to hell. We woke last night to the sound of something walking in the attic. The locked door was unlocked and open when we woke in the morning. I called BS on it, saying I didn't believe it, and we decided to sleep on the living room on the floor nonetheless and closed the door to the creepy room for the duration. The next night, after hiking all day, we were eating and drinking outside by the fire. A few adult beverages into the evening, I started daring to go into the bedroom with her. She was freaked out and said she wouldn't do it, but I said there's nothing wrong with the house and proceeded to go inside and take the challenge of exploring this haunted room more at night. As I entered the hall, my hand hit the doorknob and I turned the handle to push the door inward. The door opened 10 inches and stopped as it hit a chair that was propped against the door. My mind quickly calculated the logistics. Door opens inward, room with one entrance, chair on other side keeping me from entering, and was somehow placed there from inside. I let out a girly scream, slammed the door, and played it off to my wife like I was trying to scare her. We stayed the night and I didn't want to tell her for real until the next day when we were in the car driving away. She was pissed. It was late in the afternoon when I showed up and no one was home. There was a note left saying they all went to grab an early dinner and to hang out and they'd be back soon. My little brother was still living with my mom and we had a new tricked out PC with Quake on it. This was around the mid-90s. So I started doing the laundry, fired up the wash, and played Quake for 20 minutes, swapped the wash to the dryer, new load in the wash, and repeat. There was a little bathroom that I had to walk by between the laundry room and my brother's room, and every time I walked by the light was on. Being a recent college grad, I was obsessed with turning off lights in rooms being unused, but by the third or fourth trip, I thought, what the heck, and just blew it off. Old house, new occupant, screwing with electricals, and it's not a big deal. I was in between the walk from the laundry to the bedroom, and I heard the jangling of gym equipment in a room at the back of the house. Not working out noises, but like weights shifting around, support bars jangling. I was home alone, and I said, hello? Hello? You guys home? No one answered and it stopped. All of a sudden, my skin started crawling and I turned around in my tracks, went into the laundry room and started packing my folded clothes into the duffel to get out. I had my back to the door and all of a sudden I had a feeling something was about to hit me or rush up on me. I spun in my tracks bracing myself, but there was no one there. But I could feel it vividly. I got out and didn't come back for a month, and when I was living back in LA, I was speaking to an older woman who was a friend of my mom and was living in the house as emotional support. I told her the story and smiled, and she said, the spirit comes for those who are troubled to let you know that it's there and it knows. Has happened to your mom twice, and she told me about it in a dream. I guess I was having a tough time processing my parents being divorced after 25 years of marriage. My sister's friend had an encounter there when she lived there for 2 months because she was bummed her nutty parents moved to Europe and left her parents there all alone. And my brother-in-law woke up with the guest room doors banging because he was stressed about studying for the bar. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to press the like button. I'd really appreciate it. And of course, don't get anyone pregnant. If you do, make sure they're hot and use code SCRUBBY at the G Fuel checkout. I'm out. Peace.